Our final speaker is Karen Hust, a nature connection mentor and interfaith spiritual director. Karen has been a teacher of nature literature, an outdoor education assistant, and a rustic artist, and is currently completing a certificate in interfaith spiritual guidance to be able to offer companionship to those seeking a deeper sense of belonging within nature. Karen?
Hi, everybody. I am feeling really humble after listening to so many fabulous presentations. There's an old saying that everything worth saying has already been said, but we have to say it again because nobody was listening. I don't think that's really true in this room, of course, but I'm hoping that I have something slightly different to offer. I was asked to speak on a more personal note. So this is more like a personal essay with images. No more research results for a little while. I did take an unusual path to get here. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a designer. But I've been thinking about this problem of the human-nature bond pretty much all my life. And that path has led me to some unexpected conclusions about nature and spirit. I'm going to try to add something to what we've heard so far by telling you the stories of 3 different biophilic experiences that have touched me on a deep level. One is a workspace, one is a home, and one is a program of walks in a public garden near where I live outside of Seattle. My goal is to demystify the spiritual level of wellness so that it can deepen all of our work. So what is spiritual wellness? I know people have begun speaking about this already, so you have some notions. You'll remember from Sonia's talk that at the end of Stephen Kellert's list of attributes of biophilic design, he mentions fear and awe, reverence, and spirituality. Since they're the last on the list, they can seem a bit awesome themselves, like they're hard to approach or they shade off into a realm of transcendence. How does that relate to the material world of nature connection? How do we help people into an experience of awe or reverence, especially when not every city is designed for awe and not every person thinks of themselves as spiritual and not every building is going to have a killer view of Mount Rainier? Take a moment to enjoy Mount Rainier. I'm going to flesh out my terms a little bit and where I'm coming from, and then I'll tell you my 3 stories. I take the spiritual to refer to that realm of meanings and values in a person's life that are not measurable, but they animate our being. When we feel aligned with our deeper purpose, acting on what's most important to us, we feel authentic and energized. We feel enthusiasm, curiosity, and wonder as we open ourselves to the greater mystery of nature and begin to see how the patterns of life are constantly being created in beauty all around us. This spiritual compass is the foundation for physical and mental wellness and healthfulness. It gives us resiliency in the face of life's challenges, flexibility as we face change and loss. Ultimately, spiritual wellness helps us cultivate trust in life, whether or not we identify a higher power. The more we can recognize our participation in the order of nature, the more we can feel an underlying confidence that things tend toward an ultimate balance, no matter how turbulent the present may be. And thus, we see how important spiritual questions are to biophilia, because feeling at home in a world that ultimately makes sense is exactly what nature connection is about. The meaning we look for might not be a question of transcendence at all. Indeed, where better to look for patterns of meaning that support us, but in the ever-repeating cycles of life, death, and rebirth that we witness all around, as days are born, die, and are reborn, as clouds are forever emptied and refilled, as spring bursts upon us every year. When we ground our spiritual selves in nature, there's no need to have faith in something you can't see. The lessons of pattern, harmony, and literal resurrection are all around us every day. I believe that the surest way to the spiritual is through the material. And like I've said, I've always been interested in nature and people's ideas about our relationship to it. This is an oak tree from the town I grew up in. I visit it all the time when I go back. I've followed my nose over the years, spending time for a while in the library and time for a while in the woods. I studied art, literature, and theories about this crazy, magnificent place we find ourselves in as the conscious members of an ever-changing web of life. I followed that very airy side of this question long enough to earn a PhD in English on the topic of women and nature, and that was fascinating, but I felt like I was getting paradoxically farther and farther away from the actual material experience that I care so much about. So I reeled myself back to earth, and I spent time studying the natural world, outdoor education, and real materials like wool in spinning and weaving. About 10 years ago, I brought these two sides together when I got inspired to start making things with some of the branches that kept falling down in our yard. I thought they were too beautiful to burn, so I'd see if they wanted to become art. I started experimenting in rustic furniture building, combining my hand-spun yarn and tapestries with chairs made of different tree species to represent different natural energies. I figured it would let me learn more about what nature had to teach and to pass it along to others without words getting in the way. We had a big old outbuilding on our property where I could make all the noise and mess I wanted. When I told my husband about my plan, he said, "It's perfect for you. Nature, spirit, and power tools." This is the title for my talk today, because I believe you all have powerful tools at your disposal to help people connect more deeply to nature so they can make greater meaning and feel more at home in the world. These tools are easier to use than you might imagine, and the benefits are huge, so important right now as we struggle to understand our place in the order of things. So here's story number one. My wood shop was an example of how all it took was openness to what was in front of me to create a spiritual experience. This is my friend Lily, sort of. Sorry about the fuzziness of the slides. This building, which is a rundown seaplane hangar, was an ideal in-between space joining nature and culture. One whole side of it opened like a giant garage door to let me share the sun and the rain. Mice had made homes in the insulation. My wind-fallen materials began to arrange themselves around the walls to dry, and little by little the space became a lot like Max's bedroom in Where the Wild Things Are, a place I always wanted to live. The separation between the building and the outdoors seemed to dissolve, and the separation between me and what the trees wanted me to do with them could also dissolve. There, I let myself apprentice to the materials themselves, playing with pattern and meaning. The more I listened and watched, the bigger the patterns that seemed to emerge. I ended up building a medicine wheel of chairs, each representing one of 8 points in the cycle of a day or a year or the directions on the compass, using different woods and weavings to express what I knew of the cross-cultural meanings of those points, from the gentle inspiration of a spring dawn to the still reflective peace of an autumn evening. My idea was that in choosing a chair, we take our seat in place and open ourselves to the influences of that place. What do we learn from the energy of the fiery midsummer south? And what from the purified structure of the wintry north? This is the nature example in my triad, showing how by delving down deep into the material, we emerge in a realm of order and pattern. Letting the woods take over my wood shop was a powerful way for me to begin to see the larger order around me and let it show me the medicine wheel. That experience made me want to live in better harmony with nature, and it helped inspire me and my husband to attempt to remodel a 50-year-old house into a living building, and this is my second story. The house was already a very biophilic design, a lovely example of Pacific Northwest regional modernism. Even though it would have been easier and cheaper for sure to meet performance goals by just tearing down the house and starting fresh, we knew we wanted the challenge of trying to find ways to work with the old structure. The materials, the history, and the beauty of this place were just too valuable to waste. From the first moment we walked into our future project, we knew it was a building that could teach us about living in harmony with its land. In fact, we wondered which of its many natural charms would prove the most inspiring to live with. Would it be the massive trees that sway in the breeze and offered a gateway to our new front door? Would it be the ancient cherry tree that stands between two buildings, anchoring and embracing the home? Would it be the water that we felt we almost floated over as we looked out the huge windows? As it turns out, having lived in the house for 6 months now, I realize it isn't the obvious moments of nature connection that have changed me most. The most spiritually inspiring part of living in our house is the nitty-gritty material reality of the sun and rain and soil. What is truly awe-inspiring is the feeling of living more literally in alignment with the wheel of the year, binding ourselves to use only the power of the sun and only the water that rains from the clouds. We're apprenticing ourselves to the constraints of reality and finding it allows greater meaning to grow. Nature ripens into spirit, and we begin to feel at home in a deeper way than we ever have before. My last example, my story number 3 on spiritual wellness, is the Strolls for Wellbeing program at Bloedel Reserve, which is near where I live. For those of you who don't know about my favorite local garden, it's 150 acres of forests and gardens designed over time with the help of different landscape architects and given by the Bloedel family to be a healing resource for its visitors. The Strolls Program was founded 5 years ago, and after I fell in love with it as a participant, I've gotten involved as a volunteer and a teacher. The way it works is this. Participants sign up for a 3-month session, and at an opening meeting, they're given a booklet of self-guided walks on trails all over the reserve. The booklet explains the program, and it's filled with inspiring quotes and pictures and lots of space for journaling or drawing. It's divided into 12 walks, each focused on a certain theme, beginning with awareness and moving through topics like possibility, transition, forgiveness, freedom, and trust, to name a few, and ending with fulfillment. Each stroll is mapped onto a section of the garden, and the prompts for reflection are linked to specific experiences the walker is having. For instance, you might be invited to consider new possibilities as you pass through a gate, or to think about vulnerability and trust as you navigate a winding boardwalk over wetlands to a hidden goal, or to think about the energizing feeling that transitions in life can have as you suddenly arrive at a grand overlook. It's okay to pick whatever theme you're in the mood for on a given visit, but all the themes together create an arc that leads from opening through acceptance to gratitude, tracing a spiritual medicine wheel of transformation that strollers feel physically as the landscape design incites and supports their experience. The Strolls Program represents biophilic power tools at their best. It's a great example of a mixture of physical, psychological, and spiritual healing modes all rolled into one. While the landscape is having its way with them, participants are invited to open to the awareness of what they're experiencing, to reflect on their lives, and to connect that feeling that they have in nature to a larger personal meaning. The physical exercise promotes healing. All the chemical and visual qualities of the forest and garden bring their health-giving attributes. And the emotional and energetic experiences that the landscape provides help open the stroller to whatever spiritual level of healing is right for them that day. They're making meaning in the presence of beauty and order, influenced subconsciously by the patterns in the landscape, perhaps aware of a growing trust that they're also part of a web of life that tends toward harmony and health. Each of the disciplines you work in, be it medicine, architecture and design, planning, or organizing, has its own set of power tools to help people increase their connection to the natural world and the healing that comes through it. But finally, I want to suggest that the spiritual dimension of biophilia itself is a form of power tool that can deepen and strengthen our work and its effects in the lives of individuals, of communities, and of the earth. Because we don't want just to change people's behavior for today or for tomorrow, but to help people internalize that change so they reframe their view of their place in the world. My 3 stories show that, first, when we form a relationship to the material, pattern emerges. When we form a relationship with pattern, meaning will emerge. And 3, when we form a relationship with meaning, we have a grounded spiritual wellness that strengthens and speeds healing on all levels. Thank you.